And for Rohan also, I think it is at least the
Yeah.
third time
Third time.
on the pod.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise.
Mm.
Hey,
So
hey, Panda.
hey Panda, you're here finally. Still
So
still dripping wet
we were
from the
actually,
bath.
yeah, we were guessing out actually what you were doing. Was the time wasn't clear to you, or your clock is set, some minutes behind or something? What is it?
No, I don't have an excuse. I would just say that we had started, if I remember correctly, we had started this on 3rd Jan last year. Today is 2nd
Oh,
Jan.
all
So
right.
a very happy new
Oh,
year to all the viewers,
Okay.
and
Happy New Year
let's
to conversation on Panda and Vyas as well. So I think, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Happy New
same
Year,
for me.
everyone, and
Happy New Year, everyone.
milestones all around. But enough
Yeah.
of ado
Mm.
already, and let's get started. Moderators, have take it away.
yes, last year has been a year, I would say, of protest. Especially it was marked by the farmers' protest that went on for 358 days, to be precise. We had varying issues, and the issue of MSP had come up regularly, the three farm laws, and then there were issues of farmer suicides. So I thought that it would be a great opportunity to discuss all the farming issues right here in one place. So this is a very specific episode, starting the year with the specific theme-based episode. The theme of this episode will be agriculture. We'll try to cover all the issues, that are plaguing the agriculture system in India, and the way forward that we can think of. And let's just see how well it goes. Right. So I'll just be starting. This will be a sort of discussion and not a debate. So let me clarify that. And moderators are not to be fired at. But we'll be starting with the discussion of. We'll be starting with the farm laws. Right. So first question for all of you. I'll bring it up to Vyas, the first auditor. That just in a brief, could you just please highlight that why these three laws and the revolt that we had seen, the protests that were going on, what was the basic reason behind that protest? Very, very basic reason.
Right. So the government was attempting to, bring in reforms into agriculture, and these were three very specific laws, and they eliminated some of the restrictions that India's policymakers thought wise to bring into agriculture. And just to lay down the context, in the context in which they are bringing in these reforms, the context is that 50% of Indians directly draw their incomes from agriculture. So half of your population is completely dependent on this, whereas everybody knows that the GDP has been below 20%, but only this year it has touched 20%. But otherwise, for the last 6 or 7 years, it was below 20%, close to 15% in terms of contribution to the GDP. So what that means is, on per capita basis, agriculture has been one of the worst performing trades. If you consider it as an occupation, and that is what we are seeing in the numbers as well. If you look at all the migrant labor in India, those are all migrating from agricultural jobs into other jobs, even class C and class D jobs. People prefer being a watchman in the city instead of farming on the land on which they have grown. So such is the state of Indian agriculture, and everyone agrees that there is need of reform. Now, what those reforms will be must be debated, and there has been a tendency of this government to sort of smash down reforms down the throat of people, no matter what is the opposition, and their current standing in the parliament also permits such action. But here, what they have seen is massive blowback on the popular front, where there were massive protests all across Delhi, and it was a very visible protest, and it was also a successful protest because government was has finally taken back these reforms, and they might attempt to bring reforms in the future in a different form, but for now they have been stalled. And whether it is a mistake of the approach, or it is trying too many reforms at once, or it is taking too many steps at once, whatever the fault is, the fault has been made, and political points have been scored by everyone who is involved here. So that would be my context. Did I miss something, or like what was the question again? Can
Rohan,
you repeat?
Rohan,
Yeah.
and would you like to add something? Basically, the question is regarding why these protests regarding the farm laws were in general going
Mhm.
on. Or I would reframe it and change the just continue the topic. That do you think that this theme that we are witnessing today, the politicization of agriculture, Is it high time that it has come on the forefront? We definitely know that it is running the shows behind. But Rohan, do you think that this thing has come on the forefront, the politicization of agriculture and passing of laws, agricultural laws, without consulting a parliamentary committee? Your views on that?
So I think the catch is there itself. The passing these laws without any consultation with the parliamentary committees. There was a large miscommunication gap that was there when these laws were passed. That the government was not able to communicate to the farmers that why these laws were meant for in a successful way. But that is what parliament is for. You have to ask your MPs to go down, the actual representatives of these people at the local level, and communicate the same reforms to them. You have to ask your MLAs, you have to ask your panchayats. Later, the government was ready to sit with, they sent their minister to negotiate with the farmers directly. If they could have done it in place with the panchayat leaders and if with the MLAs and with the MPs, this could have been much more easier as a process. So, thwarting of legislative reforms have been one of the, hallmark of this government before as well. And this time it has actually, has gone against them. And, they have also understood that dwarfing these institutions of parliamentary democracy and, this democratic process is something that can, become a huge issue and huge problem for them. So I think that is one of the major issues. Communication gap was there. So as such, if you look at the reforms, they are not very, I would say, bad reforms or the reforms that haven't been discussed by committees before on agriculture. Most of the reforms have been taken up from MS Swaminathan's recommendations, and these reforms have been in debate for quite some time. The only issue is that maybe the backfire has on these reforms from opposition side, or the kind of narrative that opposition has hijacked is to just prove a point to the government that you cannot just walk alone. You have to take all the sides into picture. So even if Congress government would have been there, they would have gone for the similar type of reforms, because these reforms are not something which are actually attested to one political party view or something. These are some basic reforms that India needs at this point in time. So any government would have gone for it, but they failed to communicate. So I think that was a major issue that they faced this time. And also there's a trust deficit in Modi these days. If you look at demonetization failed. People have a way of seeing leaders. Specifically the charismatic leaders. So when you elect a leader on charisma, and if that leader fails, एक तरीका है ना कि आपने भगवान बना दिया और भगवान fail हो गया. So then it's like you start seeing it with the same tainted lens again and again. So anytime this government, even if next time this government brings any significant reform, it would be a backfire. It would be very difficult for this government to communicate to people, because they have done this with demonetization, with GST, now with agriculture reforms. And so I think people have also associated a trend with this government now.
And Pegu, would you like to add something here?
Take a political point, politicization.
Yeah, Rohan is. Yeah, he is very correct with the point that they have not respected the parliamentary democracy. So every time, for everything, they just want to put on their bill, and by the virtue of the numbers, they legislate the bill. So that's not how a democracy should work. You should do a consensus-based approach, and where you take the opposition, the civil society, and the normal janta to your fold, and then you discuss the problems, and then you work on that, and then legislate. So that has really caused a problem.
Okay, fine. We can agree to that there has been some misunderstanding both on the part of the government as well as the opposition. And it is definitely visible that both these, be it opposition or the ruling party, they want to take advantage of whichever group they can find for their political vote bank. Towards the end of these farm laws, there was a proposal that was sent by the farmers, which was accepted by the cabinet. It was regarding bringing a rule or a law to mandate the MSP. So let us now shift our discussion towards this MSP, because this is something that has been going on in India. And there have been debates every year about raising the price of MSP or the quality. So my question now will be for Rohan. Rohan, do you think that MSP is a necessary evil when it comes to agriculture?
Oh, let me refer to some notes. I have written something about MSP today.
Yeah, definitely.
So with
Meanwhile, Panda, can you define
yeah.
MSP for our
Yeah. So what
audience?
MSP is, it is the minimum support price that is announced by the government before the sowing season. So as to, if you get a price below that, for example, you are selling your wheat for 1 quintal, let's say 4,000 rupees, and the MSP is of 5,000 rupees. So you can go to the government procurement FCI and you can sell your wheat at 5,000 rupees to them. So that is a minimum support price at which government will definitely procure, and it is an open-ended procurement. It is given for 22 crops and one sugar cane, for which it is called FRP, fair and remunerative price. This is the basics for that.
So, taking on MSP, so I was reading this very interesting paper on Economic and Political Weekly. So one can go and refer to this. So this talks about that how we have shifted the focus of MSP to very narrowly very narrow outlook. The idea is that when MSP got started, the real idea for introducing MSP was self-sufficiency in food when India got independent. So the idea was that if we subsidize the grain production, then more than subsistence farming, people will be more interested in commercial farming, and we can fill our silos and we can support our population, which is in need of food, grains, and other essential items or other essential food items. But then, if you look at this, also helped in shifting the pattern of cropping to wheat and rice, the commercial cropping of wheat and rice. MSP was also one of the pushing factor behind that, why wheat and rice was highly grown in India, because initially these two were the, I would say, benchmark crops for MSP. But if you look at the recent focus on MSP, or the focus these days of MSP is increasing farmers' income or assuring income for farmers. So it has become more of a livelihood tool than a policy tool now these days. And what has happened is that, even pulses got added to this embed. And then there is a distortion in numbers of food grains produced owing to this now. Because, now this has gone beyond the control of the government. Initially, government was using it as a political tool. Now it has become a populist tool. Now people are looking at it as a benchmark tool, that this is a benchmark rate, like we have got repo rate. For example, tomorrow government comes out and say that repo rate won't be there anymore, but there's a lot of dependency on repo rate now. Now repo rate is not simply anything, but they can revoke bank rate without any issues, because bank rate is not used. So same has gone with MSP now. MSP has become such a benchmark now for livelihood of the people, or providing them remunerative prices. And this has become such a hijacked issue by most of the political parties, and by leaders in the agriculture society as well. Now I will say that in agriculture society also, the movement is not led by the real farmers, or the farmers who are having small land holdings, or are hand to mouth in situation. It is also led by the leaders in the farming community, which are very well to do and very well off, and they produce in large amounts. So for them, MSP makes total sense, but not for the people who is producing for a subsistence level, or a barely marginalized commercial level. But that is the reality of a democratic nation, because there is always a thin line between democracy turning to populism. So MSP has fractured in the idea itself, and it has become a political necessity now. To get off it is very difficult for any government. This government actually took a very brave stand by passing this law of MSP, and that's true of them, because they are in absolute majority and they can take such a stand. So any government in coalition wouldn't have even dared to think about this. So now this government took the stand to wave it off. But again, as we have, even farmers need some political issue as well. To make their presence feel. If everything will go to a more of a private influenced market, then it will become a proper commercial activity. As of now, agriculture in India is not just a commercial activity; it is also a sort of a politicization is there, and it is impacting politically as well. So this is one of the idea that I wanted to introduce to our users about that, how the meaning of MSP changed and how the idea of MSP has changed over the years.
Yeah, Vyas, you want to say something?
Yeah, so actually on MSP, I had prepared and done some research, and like a lot of people are aware of the drawbacks of MSP. But in my research, I have discovered that MSP might even be the biggest policy mistake of the 21st century by India. So I have a few points to back this claim, and I want to be very rational when I make these claims. So the first thing with MSP is that it is market distorting. So it is precisely anti-market, and when you do things against the market, I'll give you an example of what happens. So government procures wheat and rice at the rate of 30 or 27 rupees per kg, then goes and sells it in in the belts where people need food support for 1 or 2 rupees per kg. Then it gets sold back in the black market, gets back transported to Delhi, then again it goes to Bihar, and there are at least 3 or 4 times you can round trip the same grain, and cost the taxpayer the money in procurement, and on the other hand, the grain does not even get delivered to the people who really want it. So these are the kind of things that allowing a market distorting force, which is MSP, to exist. This is what it does to Indian agriculture, and this can also be seen in the growth of agricultural sector in broad terms. So the first point, it is anti-market. Second point is that it is also anti-environment. Why is it anti-environment? Because it is forcing these farmers to grow these grains. India is not a tropical country. If you had been a tropical country, growing rice would have been the perfect crop, because you would have had rains all 365 days of the year. Whereas the people, they're growing rice on parched lands where there is simply not enough water. And India is one of the biggest exporters of rice. Each kilogram of rice that we produce costs 5,000 kilograms of water. Essentially, we are exporting 5,000 kilograms of water with every kg of rice that we export, and India is a water deficit country. So when are the policy makers going to wisen up? I mean, the third point that I want to make is this is anti-fiscal prudence. Where is the fiscal prudence of a country which does not have resources to even build roads, where we are spending $26 billion on agriculture? The revenue expenditure on agriculture is $26 billion. Now, this includes irrigation works and all, but of course, a large part goes into income support and price support. And Rohan, I just have these few more points to make, and after that, of course, we can go ahead with you as well. So this is completely not prudent fiscally. $26 billion. We don't even need back of the envelope calculations to understand that it is enough to pay $26 to 1 billion people every year, which is 2,000 rupees. Not a small amount for a country like India. So I just want to make this point that we are in no position financially to take on such an income support measure. Fourthly, it is anti-equality. What is this reinforcing? It is the big farmers who are getting all of their grain procured at these government rates, and the procurement is not reaching to the low farmer to the extent that it should. So it is reinforcing the inequalities that were already enforced because of unequal distribution of land. The big landowners get all the benefits of MSP, and the small landowners get their lands even further they get divided. Then there is a huge build-up with FCI. I mean, can you imagine? India was a country where we were in food deficit. There was not enough food to feed our entire population, and right now we have food enough to feed for the next 10 years. If for the next 10 years we have drought, we still have enough food to feed everyone. There is such a huge buildup of buffer stocks with FCI, and a large part of it is wasted because we simply don't have the capacity to get that distributed. All of that gets wasted, and the taxpayer has to pay for it. Then my final point is, and after that I will yield the rest of my time. It is inflationary. So what it does is it sets this unrealistic prices for these goods. And the policymakers do not understand that their distribution systems do not cover 100% of the population. The population is also covered by the market forces. And when you inflate the price by enforcing such prices at the outset, the people who are buying from the market get killed because of inflation. So I mean, on all of these fronts, MSP is a sheer failure. And I agree with Rohan that this is going to take massive political will in order to remove that. Now, with that said, I am not against income support for the farmers. PM Kisan was an excellent scheme. We can continue with income support, but let's not, provide market support for selling of grains. And this is what, India gets cornered at WTO for as well. If we did income support, it is a green box subsidy, and, it's totally fine. People are fine with us giving money to the farmers directly because they are the depressed class. But if we provide income support for the goods that they're trying to sell, it is, totally a no-no on the international stage as well, and for right reasons. So that would be the last point, Panda.
Rashikar, your views on
So
MSP Burden?
before, yeah, so before we move to any further point, I wanted to provide a case study of America.
Mhm.
So in the late 1970s, whoever was the president, I don't remember his name. So they started a scheme where they would provide MSP for milk. So they started procuring milk, and every 6 months they would revise the price due to political pressure or whatever the reason be. So, they had now sufficient of milk. They had nowhere to store, so they started making cheese of that. Meanwhile, there was so much of fiscal slippage, and then they started storing those cheese in the caves. And then ultimately, when the next president came, he saw that this program is not doing any good for the society. Rather, it's just a fiscal slippage. So they distributed all the cheese for free, and they had to cancel this scheme. So it shows that MSP has failed once, and even in India, the procurement is just more than 90% of procurement is just from four of the states, which includes Punjab, Haryana, MP, and UP, I think. And so, and MSP has started in India around 1970s. So in last 40-50 years, we are not able to build a proper structure where we can properly uh, take all don't have logistics to properly transport or store those grains. So how would we manage such a huge load of other crops, or let's say open end procurement of the whole country, if we make it a legal right?
Right. I have heard this point. I'll just give one more chance to Rohan. Just before that, let me say a few points that are in the favor of MSP. Although I was a moderator, but just for our viewers to have the second view, it is that what I personally feel is that India is not a poor country. So I don't think so. Money is an issue. It's just that money is not channelized. That is first thing. MSP as a project, Rohan had rightly mentioned. It came back in 1967 when there was this era of green revolution. When we were not having, it is often called that we need to have the triple A in agriculture. So it is affordability, accessibility, and availability. So after this green revolution, we have the availability, we have the affordability, but yeah, the problem is of accessibility. It is not reaching the right people. But I don't know where I've read this, but I don't see a problem that if people who are rich are getting benefited, as long as the people who are poor are also getting benefited. That is first thing. Second thing is, I think so the most important issue that we are facing today in MSP is not MSP as an idea, but it is the MSP's implementation part. It is where the loopholes are, which needs to be fixed. Because agriculture is a state subject. Having the MSP coming from the center and then states giving their own incentive without proper implementation is another issue. Apart from that, yes, it is definitely distorted towards wheat and rice, and yes, it is definitely distorted towards few states such as Madhya Pradesh, Punjab, Haryana, and Chhattisgarh. But what I would like to add is that if you increase the price of other crops, you cannot reduce the price of wheat and rice. Let me make it very clear. Again, this political, we'll have another this. But if you increase their price proportionately, is one thing. Yes, it is going to have a fiscal impact on India. But at the same time, this Antodaya Yojana that we are discussing about, the FCI that distributes, it is giving food to 67% of our total population. That is over 80 crores. So that is one factor that I would just want to transfer. Yes, cash transfer has started, PM Kisan, but now let's just see what Rohan has to say on this.
Mhm.
So I just want to add some pinch of salt to what Shekhar and Vyas have mentioned. Basically, if you look at this idea of MSP, as Vyas said, that it's anti-market, or according to a neoliberal perspective, this is something which is distorting the free market. But if you look at other government sectors where we have introduced these market forces, look at health, kind of conundrum we have seen in COVID-19, where the prices of vaccines are going high or anything. So that is one. Second, if you look at how allowing these market forces in other sectors like education have created some ruckus here and there. So I'm saying we are not here to give the free way to market completely. We are not here to give the free way to the government regulated things completely. So I'm saying we need to strike out the balance in here. So it's not just that we can as these three laws mandated that contract farming was there, but there were several restrictions in these laws on contract farming as well. APMCs were abolished, but there were some alternative channels or some detailed laws might have been prepared or will be prepared in future for regulation of transactions between the farmer and this. I can remind you of the famous Pepsi case when the Pepsi actually launched a case against the Gujarat farmers for using the technology they have provided for growing potato chips. So free market can go to a different reality as well. So we cannot completely rely on allowing market forces to seep inside the agriculture. That is one. Second is when Vyas actually have picked up different issues regarding FCI, regarding and have pegged everything to MSP, and this is exactly where the problem is. FCI issue is FCI issue separately. It's an infrastructural problem of India. It's a bureaucratic problem of India. It's an administrative problem of India. There are a lot of issues in it, not just MSP. So idea is that, this is the politicization that we are talking about around MSP. Everything relates to agriculture is MSP. So idea is that agriculture has got far more worse problem than MSP itself. Our growth got initiated in Green Revolution. After that it has plateaued for a long time. What about the promise of doubling the farmer's income? How can you double the farmer's income if 50% of your population is still dependent upon a sector that contributes 17% to your GDP? It's emphatically impossible. So idea is that when we talk about why MSP, 50% population is dependent. You have to provide them. Why you are providing Narega then? Can't people go and find out jobs? So idea is that what I'm trying to emphasize here is that any radical measure as of now on any of these issues won't work. We need to devise a bottom-up approach. Look at the cooperative society, Amul. We see Amul as an example. But Amul started way back when Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel started organizing these farmers, and way later Amul got. So I'm talking about here a peaceful social change. I'm talking about here a change in thought process of the people who are working at the lower rung, and when they will become actually then they'll become acceptable of these reforms and measures. Secondly, that what is the idea on alternative employment then? So for tomorrow, let's say, I completely abolish MSP. I say it's a market-driven idea. Then, suddenly, all the stocks that we are carrying, because the idea that we are saying that, stocks are also declining, we also release that in the market. Suddenly the prices of wheat and rice falls. And one crop failure for any agricultural person will destroy his entire upcoming or forthcoming ventures into agricultural society. So the question of agriculture is not because of that it is not yielding, it is not performing well. More than performance, it has become an issue of viability now these days. As Vyas rightly mentioned, that a farmer doesn't want his kid to become a farmer. He wants him to do something. He wants him to get some job, like a job of chaprasi or something or whatever works, but not to do farming. So the kind of protest that we are seeing right now is much more bigger than pinpointing basic issues. It is also about that farmers are thinking about their future now. That if we keep doing agriculture, they are not able to see any good future of agriculture in India itself. If you look at it, because the rampant suicides are there, and one of the primary reason as identified according to the research, and you can refer this in EPW, one of the primary reason is the debt. So what about the credit facility? So do we provide enough loans to our farmers? The ground reality is very different from this. Many a times banks do ask for collaterals, even if the government norms mandate otherwise. And the farmers which are working, let's say, contract laborer which is working on some other's farm, how can he provide a proof of some land or some collateral, some worthy collateral to the bank? So idea here is that there are a lot of problems, and pegging everything to MSP may not resolve the issues for so we can find out justifications for pro MSP or anti MSP, but I'm saying that the problem of agriculture is much more bigger than the simple MSP issue. What we have focused right now in our entire debate up till now is only the issues after the crop has been produced and it has been shipped to the market. So the issues that exist in the market, whether it's MSP, whether it's procurement, what about the issues that yield itself is not there? What about the issues that agriculture? agriculture modernization is not there. So I think, holistically looking at it, and also there were two more laws that came in. One was regarding the contract farming, one was regarding the abolition of APMCs. So idea is that, MSP got highlighted somehow. But I just want to tell our viewers is that, it's just a buzz concept. But if you look at it in the entire magnetic agriculture scenario of India, it may not have to do way more than it is being projected. So its idea is that, it's inflated as a concept more. So that is also what I wanted to say and wanted to bring to the table.
Yeah, so before we move on to the next topic, the only thing that I wanted to mention was that MSP is actually 50% of India's entire agriculture expenditure, if you look at it from the government side, right? So I mean, it is a huge policy and a huge burden that is going on right now. And if this thing is not well placed, then it is worth pointing
Indian
it out.
government spent a huge amount in defense. What about that burden? We are not having any fight any soon. So idea is that, we need to find a better distribution here, as Panda said. It's not about the crunch of money. It's also about the better distribution here. So we cannot give these simple blank justifications to things, because what I feel is that, right now people are not ready to accept the abolition of MSP. So we need to look into more depth of how we can thought around this, or how we can, make changes around it. That is also one of the aspects that we need to look upon.
Let's just move on to the next issue. Vyas, just stating your point that, it is 50% of the cost, that is correct, but it is also the ultimate cost where the procurement happens, and also 50% of our workforce is dependent on the sector. So I think so it is rightly devised. So anyways, it's an ever-going debate. We have again pros and cons. Now, Pego in this debate mentioned something about converting that milk into cheese. So I have this very interesting topic that resolves around this concept. It would also take up some burden from the MSP. So what are your views on food processing industries? Should farmers or government invest some portion from the MSP to the food processing industries? At the same time enabling more jobs and making farmers get better income for what they have produced and exporting it. So what are your views on this? I'll start with Rashikar.
Yeah, so I think you have stated a very good point. So what service sector did to urban area, rural area can get the same benefit by food processing industry. However, I think government should not get indulged too much. It should only act as the moderator rather than getting full invested, because we have seen how inefficient government is in any sector that we see. So yeah.
Rohan, your views on food processing industries and agriculture?
It's definitely interesting, and food processing has been in business in India. Let's say the example of pickles that has been manufactured in our house. That's one of the food processing technologies that we have been using for quite some time. But I think food processing, as we had one session on Panda and Vyas discussion with Anveshan team, which were trying to do some micro food processing, and they highlighted some real issues on ground where taking permissions, establishing those things, surpassing the social barriers, and actively involving people into such activity is difficult on ground. And so in food processing industry also, what I do believe is that sort of a cooperative model can work better in this. And some of the Indian entrepreneurs like Anveshan and other such entrepreneurs can become the agents of transformation, which can establish trust, which can establish a sort of mutual relationship between the farmers and the people who are providing technology. So that can be the way forward for food processing. But what government doing as of now, mega food parks and this whole thing, I think this is mostly, I would say, a media stunt than the reality that is there on ground, because situating a mega food park in one location might not solve the issues for them. But what government is doing in Wan Dhan Yojana is something that can be replicated in agriculture sector as broadly as well, because training those tribal peoples in processing the tribal the produce that they are obtaining from forest, and packaging them well, and providing it to the open market for consumers to feed upon. So I think that can be the way forward for food processing. Technology wise, I think it's a well established sector. There's a lot of technologies we can import, some technologies as well, and India is now growing at a good pace. We have got a lot of startups coming up, and a lot of technology influx can be managed. But more than technology, I would say it's more important for us to decide the model of how we can go about it.
Yeah, Vyas, your views on food processing industries and the future that it holds with respect to agriculture.
Yeah, so food processing industry, India has a huge gap there, and in India's food processing capacity is not nearly enough the amount that we produce. And such stories are very common that mangoes produced in India first get shipped to China in order to be turned into puree and then get shipped back to India for further processing because India just lacks the capacity to process its raw produce. And that is also responsible in large part for the large amount of exports of raw produce that we do. So we produce raw grains, raw rice, and we export it as is, whereas most of the gains in the value chain come during the food processing part of the if you process a kilogram of grain, it gains a lot of value. But if you sell it as raw grain, there is not enough value there. So most of the value when it comes to food is in the processing step, and India lacks the capacity currently. And these stats have been repeated again and again. If you look at the cold storage, India it doesn't even have even 10% of what we need. And if you look at the general logistics infrastructure, which is a large part of moving food around, that also is poor in India. So all of these factors are contributing to poor food processing capacity. And again, Rohan was right in mentioning that a big food is not the right step here. Establishing a few big mega food parks does not actually have the same benefits as having a more decentralized approach where there are smaller food manufacturing units. Because when you manufacture food at scale, it doesn't quite retain the same amount of health benefits, and in order you are reducing the nutrient quality of the raw grain by having big food production. Instead, if you have food production in sort of small units, they tend to retain more of their nutrients, and it is easier to maintain a healthy level of nutrition among your population and so on. So decentralized food production is the way to go, and right now the policy stance seems to be more towards big food and less towards decentralization. And problems on the ground exist, such as getting permits for opening new small manufacturing units. Most of these operate informally, and there are all these complicated tests that you need to pass in order to produce food. So, for example, the Food Standards Authority of India, FSSAI, right? They have a complicated list, which is also important in order to ensure that the consumer is getting high quality food. But on the other hand, it disables all the small entrepreneurship that can happen in food processing. So I think we need to go more decentralized, and we need to incentivize entrepreneurs to start agri businesses in rural areas, because those are the way how we can provide employment in those areas, allow people to move on from agriculture and be a part of this manufacturing industry. And it will also reduce India's import bill, because a lot of these processed foods we are then importing from other countries. If we have the processing capacity locally, India can process them here itself. And of course, India is very well blessed in terms of variety of geography it has. So we can grow almost any crop, and availability of ingredients when it comes to food processing is not an issue. It's a non-issue in India. So the issues really lie on the logistics end and on the regulations end. If we can sort those out, India can really be a food powerhouse.
I also just see this not only from the nutrients point, but also I see it from the point that farmers, if the food processing industry is located nearby, they tend to get more money compared to what they can get while processing. That is first thing, right? And we have talked about food processing industries. We have had Rohan,
Rohan once heard.
I just wanted to add one point in food processing is that any model that any Western country has followed in their food processing journey will not be applicable to India, because if you look at it, these FSSAI norms and this large list of norms and licensing, this is a Western idea that has been implemented in India. I'll tell you something about my house. Pure ghee bhi lana hai, so we go to a village and we trust simply कि हाँ ये pure ही होगा. Okay, so that mini processing and the decentralized processing is something that can work for India, but these mega food parks and these things have been a completely westernized concept, and it's very difficult to bring that model and completely set it on the top of our economy and societal structure. So
Yeah,
we need to devise something completely new for this if we want to
right.
make it much more adoptable amongst the masses.
Definitely. 50% of our population is in agriculture. Out of that, 40, at least 40% are in the root villages. So yes, definitely we need something very decentralized. This is one point. Right. We have been talking about technology and modernizing agriculture as a way forward when it comes to, the growth yield. But at the same time, we also have some issues like fragmented land. So my question now will be for Rohan as to how can we adapt these technologies? What role can government play in adoption of these technologies when we also have this problem of fragmented land holding, right? And what future it also holds with respect to environment?
So, I have got a very interesting, trivia on fragmented landholding, and I myself got amazed when I read it. So it was some ORF article which gave this, and it's like China. In China, 62% people have a land holding below zero
Hmm.
point 0.5 hectares, and in India, it has 67% people have got land holding below 1 hectare. So basically, small land holding as harped upon a big issue is not really a big issue because if you look at China is performing very well in agriculture, and they have got quite a, I would say, more than 50% or 62% of their population having a smaller landholding. So here, I would say, that, technology adoption is not happening or yield is not there because of landholding. I would say it is more of an excuse for the government. But on the policy level, if you look at it, China is able to achieve the same with the similar percentage of the smaller landholding in their country. But idea is that you talked about the adoption of mechanization and those things in such small landholding setup. I think cooperatives is the right idea to go around it. Recently, government has done this change that from the Ministry of Agriculture and Farming, they have taken out the cooperatives department and form a new Ministry of Cooperatives. And the entire norms and rules have been changed around that. So if there is collaboration and cooperative, like simple concept like seed village concept, if you look at it, where a lot of farmers of the village come together and learn the technique of producing and preserving seeds, so that they will never feel the shortage of seeds in coming future. So such type of activities, such type of introduction of farm mechanization can actually help India, where these farmers can come together and work together, adopting one or two machinery amongst themselves or amongst a village. And this organization can be done at panchayat and block level as well. This can be administratively run as well. If there is a point that how we can bring them together, no need to bring them together, run it administratively. If you look at, India is one of the largest country in terms of tractors that are being
Adopted.
sold and bought. But and then we are discussing here about the farm mechanization problem. So there really is something that is existing at more administrative and policy level than pegging issues on small land holdings and other aspect.
Right. Pegu, Rashika, I have a similar question to you. Just a minute, yeah. I have this question with respect to this adaptation of technology and modernizing agriculture. So we see that there is an hesitance, and it is very evident. We see when it comes to investing in technology with respect to the agriculture sector. There are in few places, such as in Madhya Pradesh, there are custom hiring centers, but it has not been replicated all over India. So what do you think is the main issue, that farmers are not willing to adapt technologies, the resources are missing, or is it something that such a stigma has been created that the production will not increase significantly, or all these issues? What do you think is the main issue that is preventing not only the farmers but also the government after knowing the issue that such thing is missing in India?
See, I think the idea is not properly marketed to the farmers. So many startups, they have started going to villages and they are trying to convince farmers. So similar things could have been done by the government, although they have started custom hiring centers and many other schemes like ARYA, which retains youth in agriculture. So those proper, I think before anything, you have to convey your message and what they can expect from technology, and if there are some results from other places which they can use, And see, every state might have different kinds of problems. So MP might have different problem than Bihar. So the tech solutions should also be local in nature, rather than just copying from one place. So I think proper communication is missing, and investment from the government needs to be sped up. And startups which are coming, they should government should facilitate them, and rather than discouraging them.
Right. Vyas, your views, and also I would like your views on digitization of agriculture. We have this e-NAM market that is coming up as a beautiful concept. Use of technologies, when we should definitely discuss the e-NAM project. Also, apart from these digitization, we have this forecasting. Everything is available for the agriculture sector, which presently, farmers have a problem in using completely. So, what are your views on the modern technologies, specifically with respect to the digitization of the agriculture?
Right. So, digitization of agriculture, I'll just come to, I just have one view on farm fragmentation. So, India has a large, Rohan mentioned this stat that 67% of the Indian farmers own less than 1 hectare. If you increase that to 2 hectares, it includes 85% of Indian farmers. So, the large majority of Indian farmers don't have any land, or even if they have, it is a small amount of land. Now, the problem is not that the land is getting fragmented, but the problem is that these people are still holding on to these loss-making pieces of land and not allowing consolidation in order to allow for, the farming activity to become more economically sustainable. Right now, what is happening is people have a huge emotional attachment to their piece of land, and they sort of don't want to give it up. And what it is doing is it is acting as a huge drain on their economic well-being. And when the farm size gets below 1 hectare, it actually becomes loss-making. In order to maintain that land, in order to produce enough, you have to spend a lot more than you get out of selling those crops. And once you get a bigger land, it's easier to mechanize, it's easier to do things at scale, things become more profitable. So of course, the problem here is also of mindset, where the last generation of people, even when their land sizes have reduced down a lot, they're still not ready to give it up and move into other forms of occupation because of this emotional attachment that they have to this land. So, I don't have a solution for this, but this could be one way of looking at the fragmentation problem. Yeah, Panda.
Yeah, the solution for this was mentioned by Rohan. I think so. Cooperatives is the way forward. Just
right.
Bringing together all the farmers. If you're having a tractor, if that is used for 10 farms, 1 acre each. So I think so that can be a way forward. Yeah, Rohan, you're saying something.
So, we have been talking for some time now from our perspectives, we none of them are us farmers. So let's try to think something from their perspective as well. What is there in rural India as of now? Poor health, poor education, no digital facilities available. Life is deplorable. No one wants to live there. Everyone wants to go out there. And diseases like cancers are now seeping in rural areas as well. What they have got or what they're really proud of holding upon is the land that they have got. So as Vyas rightly said, the emotional attachment to it, they cannot leave it. We need to understand from their perspective as well. What substantial they have got in their life is the land that they hold. And I tell you, ये तो वो जमीन है जिसकी वो पूजा करते हैं. So no one throws out the god from his house one day on the basis of farm mechanization or on the basis of technology or on the basis of something. So we need to really understand the psyche and the mentality of it. So we cannot completely come with some Western countries and what they have done in their countries, and we can come here and then we can say the similar can be repeated, because the kind of association that the people are having to their resources in our country is something that is very, very different from the kind of association people might have in other countries. And I want to bring one more thing to this. It's a corollary example. It's not directly related to agriculture, but somewhat related to it. If you look at ice stupa, that was a concept that was a highly technologically based concept that was introduced in Ladakh by Sonam Wangchuk, and ice stupa was used to make land sustainable for farming in the summer times, when the ice will melt and will provide the sustainable source of water and irrigation to the barren lands in Ladakh, and they are converting these days. But one interesting point that one needs to note about ice stupa, it's called ice stupa. There has been a religious association that has been made to that very particular technology, that it's a stupa, and the Buddhist monks were invited to inaugurate that stupa. So, what Sonam Wangchuk did rightly here is that he understood the psyche of the people very correctly. He understood the emotional attachment of the people very correctly, because he is someone who has devised the technology for the people amongst whom he lives, amongst whom, he works, And this is where he comes from. We need someone like this, from us. So again and again, I'm saying, that, we are talking about what is good for the farmers. We are never asking, what you need. What is the kind of need that is there with you. So land I will talk about, as we have said, such an emotional issue. Even if he is in a great debt, he will never sell that land. So such an emotional issue. So if you ask them to give up that land, if you ask them to sell that land for consolidation, it's not going to work. Not going to work here in this country. People can fight over that land, that piece of land, no matter how barren it is. So that is also one of the points that I want to bring, that what is the biggest fundamental mistake that we are doing here while discussing all of these issues is that we're never understanding from the perspective of the farmer. We want them to adopt drip irrigation. वो कभी स्कूल ही नहीं गया, वो 12वीं से आगे पढ़ा ही नहीं है, उसके गांव में स्कूल ही नहीं है, वो ड्रिप इरिगेशन समझता ही नहीं है. How can you make someone who doesn't understand what soil health card does, or what NPK or nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium does, to understand the ratio of nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium? So the real solution lies in modernizing your rural economy, providing the better infrastructure, better school facilities, better life there, so that people first plan on staying there. Only dumb people stay in rural areas, and you are expecting those dumb people to understand all of those things that you are trying to say, because anyone who is smarter in rural areas will be asked to go to the urban centers. He is not doing agriculture. He understands what drip irrigation is, but he's not meant for doing that farming job. The one who is doing the farming job clearly don't understand all the concepts we are talking about here. So first thing that we need to improve there is that good health facility, good education facility, a livelihood, the better livelihood, better lifestyle to them, so that they feel happy living there. Right now there is a modern concept that has come to live in countryside. Environment is so polluted in urban areas. Let's go in. So we are opting it as a point of leisure. For them, it is a point of hardship. So we need to change that first, and then expect them to understand all these policy discussion, all these intellectual ideas that we are talking about. So I think expecting them to suddenly change and start understanding what is better for them, it's very easy from our perspective, very difficult from their perspective.
But Rohan, what I feel is
Panda,
this is a vicious cycle, no? Unless you cannot increase your income from the agriculture source, you cannot get better facilities, because government willingly have diversed its resources. We have discussed about the MSP, and we were discussing about that. That is first thing. Second thing,
why can't you get better facilities? Mulayam Singh village, Saifai has got all the facilities you want. Why can't you get better facilities in every village? If Mulayam Singh can get it in his village,
because we have more than 6 lakh villages, Rohan, which is not.
I'm just trying to say,
guys, let's move on to Pegu.
Yeah.
I think you should go ahead.
Yeah. So before we move to the next point, I just wanted to clear that we should not equate small farms with less productivity. So I have a data which states that small farms occupy only 12% of the cropped area all around the world. Still, it produces 35% of the food. So 12% of land is producing 35% of the foods. And even the case of China.
Yeah, definitely. This was a point that was brought up by Rohan himself. Also, the point is, we know that this is the reality. Small farm holding in India is a reality. What we are trying to do is make the maximum out of that reality. Mushroom farming is one. And I think so this is where modernizing agriculture and digitizing. Now, when we talk about digitizing, I had discussed about ENA that we'll be discussing of, which we also share more light on. But there are KVKs, and Krishi Vikas Kendras, where the local people in local language, they explain the farmers as to how farming can be done, what soil health card is. It is just creating awareness, which is a process which is being done by the digitized form. Yeah, Vyas, your views on this digitization that we were discussing about.
Yeah, so the recent digitization of the agriculture, that is only beginning to happen, and the wheel is slowly starting to turn. I think this is a very appreciable step, because digitization holds the key here. I mean, I don't want to sound like a techno utopian, but I mean, whether it is providing financing to the end customer, or to the end farmer, or getting them information at the right time, or making the market more transparent in terms of the prices across different places. I think digitization can solve many problems that exist in India's agriculture sector. And e-NAM is of course a step by the government, and it is totally appreciable. This is not recent. I mean, they have been trying to do this for a long time. Earlier, they I think started before 2010, and right now they have mandated that everything happens through this online digital system where there is parity of prices across different places. Because earlier it used to happen that if you sell it in some gaon which is away from the center, you will get less money, and then if you come to the center you will get more money, and such things used to exist, but now it is slowly being eradicated. The other thing that I wanted to mention was that India is also becoming a huge center for agri-tech, which we do not see the impact of which right now, and rightly so, because technologies sort of take time to manifest and deliver their full impact. But in the last 3 years, India has gotten $1 billion of venture funding into agri-tech startups in India. Now, this is a bright spot, and I think we should pay more attention to this, because this is where the technology advancement step is happening. New technology is coming into agriculture, and it will help improve productivity across the board. So agri-tech is the real bright star, and it should be, because India is, not only has a huge agricultural sector, but India's tech sector is also huge. And marrying them together, India should be, the foremost country when it comes to innovations in agriculture, and we're slowly going to see that. I'm very optimistic about the agri-tech scene that is beginning to develop in India.
Right. We have a question, and that is the next topic, next segment that we are moving on. We have a suggestion that, it is very easy to improve everything. We should also discuss about what can be done towards the resources that we have. And this brings to my next question for the discussion. That is, how organic farming and zero budget natural farming are changing a way forward for the agriculture sector. The idea of farmers not having basic commodities. But I think so this is something, again, easy to say. I know what are the implications and of that. But your views on how to make, organic farming and zero budget natural farming is something that farmers used to practice before the green revolution. The productivity was relatively low, at that time, more pest, it was more, then we had that green revolution, we had hybrid seeds, we had more fertilizer seeping in, and today, they have become the greatest problem when we have the availability of food grains. Now we are going for the quality food grains, and also there's a demand of organic food. So what are your views, Rohan? What are your views on organic farming and zero budget natural farming? And do you think that at the ground level, farmers are ready to, accept this because naturally it will mean a cut in their income, especially for a few years?
So guys, we have just finished 1 hour, and I think this is going to be the last topic. So let's budget maybe 10 minutes for everyone.
Right.
Okay. Thanks for the heads up, Yas. So coming to the idea of organic farming, the situation is that this is something that Indian people know, that Jeev Mitra, Beej Mitra. This is something, as you rightly mentioned, that has been happening, and still today there are some farms that this is practiced upon. Now, this is a very good idea when you have to do a subsistence sort of a farming. You develop your kitchen farms and other things. But when it comes to a large scale farming, you need to provide some shelf life. There are a lot of considerations when it comes to commercializing such crops. So this is where this idea actually falls short. But if I tell you, on organic farming also, if you look at there is a Paramparagat Krishi Vikas Yojana that has been launched and other things. Apart from government just talking about Jaivik Kheti, reality is that they have done very little around Jaivik Kheti. They have done more around MSP than less around Jaivik Kheti. So idea is that it is sort of a Hindu-centered idea that has become a cultural-centered idea that has become for government as of now. I'm just purely talking a political point here. So for government, it has become a broad culture-centered idea around Hinduism to propagate it as something, some sort of a kheti जहाँ पे गाय का गोबर लगता है, सूअर का क्यों नहीं लगता? Because the idea is that cow is holy worship, and it has also become a political tool for government to go everywhere and talk about this. But coming to the sustainability of this in the current market sense, we have got 17% of the world population and 2.5% of the world's land. If we have to survive on the food that is grown on our land, this is not the idea we should be going forward with.
Right. Vyas, your views on zero budget natural farming. Yes, it is definitely not sustainable, but there is also an idea as to why are we, focusing so much on agriculture? Why don't we use 40% of our land, 171 million hectares out of 328. So why don't we actually use this 40 to 50% of our land on something more productive and import the material that is being done by multiple nations? So this is also something that has often come up.
Yeah, Rohan, why don't you go first?
Yeah, Rohan.
Yeah, so the idea is that international relations, we need autonomy. Yesterday, if I started importing it from Russia, let's say, and yesterday I have a small spat with Russia because my over reliance on Russia is such that my population will not survive even for 15 days if Russia stops the trade from there. I'm done. I'm done in the international scenario. So that over reliance on any particular resource of necessity is something that no nation wants to have strategically on any other nation. So that is the international logic to it. We were used to import red wheat. There is a famous case around that as well, when we used to import that from United States of America, and how that turned out when we went on war. So these sort of constraints come in. They're quite bigger constraint if you look at it.
Yes, your view on zero budget natural farming, and also along with that, I'm just adding livestock wealth. Because majority of livestock market in India, it is owned by 67% of small and marginal farmers, and they provide an additional source of income. And it has been highlighted multiple times in economic survey also that the livestock provides more income than the agriculture sector itself. For the small and marginal farmer. So combining organic farming with something that they have done, we are just marketing the idea that is very well demonstrated by Rohan. We are just proclaiming it. The government is just proclaiming it. And it is not a feasible concept. But what are your views on this livestock and zero budget together when they are taken, which traditionally it is being done even till date?
Right. I mean, it is a brilliant idea. When you think about the synergy that exists between a farm and the animal, so the animal can graze on the farm and sort of gain energy from there, and the animals can excreta can be used in the farming, and it is a very symbiotic relationship also, which has existed historically. People are aware of this. So I mean, the problem of agriculture is not that we don't have good ideas. I mean, there is a flurry of good ideas all around, and the problem is really there in the execution of those ideas in order to convey those ideas and make sure that they executed on the ground. And then that is where the problem is. As far as the idea is concerned, I see no problem with zero budget natural farming or organic farming. The only caveat that I would have is that such practices which go away from pesticides or the modern chemicals that we add during the produce, what they tend to do is they tend to reduce the yield, which not many farmers can afford economically, and B, they also reduce the shelf life of your product. So if your product is not marketed during the fixed amount of time in which it is good, it ends up not being remunerative enough to you. So I mean, there are all these scalability issues which I'm sure we can solve with a little more engineering in it. But again, the point is not that we don't have good ideas. We have great ideas, and how to improve this. What we really lack is their implementation.
Right, Pegu, just moving towards the end of discussion. Simple. What we know that small farmers are more reliant on the informal sources of credit. Rohan has already mentioned that the reality, more than 60% are reliant on the informal sources of credit, and they fall in a debt trap that continues, over years and generations. So, for my first question is that government has, brought out so much schemes. Let's just not go into the names. There are various loans for farmers, and no collateral is being given according to the schemes. So what do you think is implementation is the problem, yes, definitely. But what do you think is the way to immediately, I would not say in the near future, there are multiple structural issues that need to be clarified. But what is the immediate solution according to you to increase the income, or I would say to export the products that have been made by the manufacturer, and also at the same time provide a formal source of credit to the farmers without removing this, if you have anything in mind?
So for credit, I think you can. So for gig workers like Swiggy workers and others, there are many startups. So they give small loans to those Swiggy delivery guy or other gig workers. So similar, I think many startups would be there working in those field. So maybe they'll scale in 1 or 2 years. So I think they can um, they can decrease the burden of government. I mean, I don't have much trust on government that they will be able to solve any issue in fast time. What else was your
Yeah, my
question?
second question was, increasing the exports of agriculture with respect to the imports that we have.
Hmm. So I think uh, supply chain setup of supply chain actually. So recently I was seeing that means very few farmers and even organic farmer can aid the farmer. So there is a huge market burgeoning of organic products or like Anveshan, they sell cold pressed oil. So there is a huge demand, increasing demand as the income of people are growing. So farmers can tap those avenues.
Right. Rohan, final question, and we'll be ending with that. Then we'll just have a ending remarks. But a final question for you is that horticulture presently accounts for 1/3 of the total agriculture sector's GDP. So, what are your views on the horticulture sector per se? It is a part of the agriculture sector, the opportunities and the challenges, and what do you see as the future of Indian agriculture?
So, if I talk about horticulture sector in particular, then horticulture sector is a high yielding sector. That you grow something, it sells for a good amount of money. But again, some limitations to horticulture sector that it should be done near to some cities like Delhi, which has such purchasing capacities, or can give you the same remunerative amount that you expect after that crop. So I would say that 1/3 of it is there, and government is pushing towards it as well in National Horticulture Mission. But yeah, there are some constraints to it as well. But it's a good way. But we need to grow wheat and rice as well. We need those staple crops in our system as well. So the biggest problem that when we talk about these things very individually, that what is going in horticulture, but these are very complexly linked with each other.
Yeah, definitely.
Every demography is not suitable for horticulture crops. Maybe, we need to grow rice somewhere, we need to grow wheat somewhere, we need food security in our nation as well, we need pulses, we need everything. So I would say the way forward for Indian agriculture sector is that government should take a bird's eye view rather than dealing with very specific issues that exist in it. And it should involve a consortium of panchayat leaders, the MLAs and MPs, to sit with it, because this is a problem that nation experience. This is not a problem that one particular person experience. भूखे मर जाएंगे हम सब लोग अगर ऐसा कुछ हो गया तो. So and this should be done. That's what I feel.
Yeah,
That
personally, I'm also in favor of never letting off. I don't know about MSP, but never letting off these wheat, specifically the wheat sector and the rice sector, reduce the amount of quantity that it produces. Not increasing, but not reducing, because that is the basis of why the Green Revolution was brought in. We were literally going to die hungry